We're so pleased to speak with you all tonight. I'll start by giving the qualifier that both myself, Meg, and Cassidy, my colleague, we both are fighting with the flu. So if we take a little break to cough or something, we'll be right back. But this is such an important topic and something we care so deeply about. So we just want to start by saying thank you so much to the YWCA Hamilton for the amazing work that you're doing and for inviting us to share some of the work that we do in Ottawa with you all. So tonight we're joining you from the unceded and unsurrendered traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, also known as Ottawa. And a little bit about us just to start. So as you've already said, Muska, my name is Meg. I'm the Policy Director and Co-ED at City for All Women, and I'm joined by my colleague Cassidy, who's the Civic Engagement Coordinator. I'm an urban planner, and my colleague Cassidy is a social worker. And we really love that intersection of how our city comes together through the social side and the physical side. Cassidy and I really love that part of our work, working together is bringing those together. So we're in Ottawa-Gatineau, and we're a community-led nonprofit. And what that really means to us is that we're very much driven by the work of our members. Our members have a huge voice in our work and really direct what we do. Originally, we're a 20-year-old organization, and we were founded to ensure that women's voices were heard in municipal decision-making. Our work really focuses on systems change. We often consider ourselves to be a bridge between the lived experience and the lived realities of residents in Ottawa and municipal processes, which sometimes are at odds, and we really try to bring them together. We invest heavily in relationship building, both with community partners and with city staff and counselors. So just quickly, our mission, so you can get a sense of who we are, is that we strive to work alongside women and gender expansive people with diverse lived experiences and community organizations to build knowledge, skills, and momentum to collectively advocate for economic, political, and social justice. And our vision, you can flip, Cassidy, thanks. A safe and equitable city where residents, communities are empowered, engaged, and thriving. Something that I think we share with the other organizations speaking tonight as well. And so how we approach our work, we're grassroots. So everything we do, again, is community driven. We're collaborative. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but often the work that we do is in partnership with other organizations, equitable and inclusive, compassionate, and transformative. So diving right into budget, and I don't know everyone's familiarity with Ottawa, so I'll just give a little bit of background, but we have a 25-member city council, 24 councillors and a mayor. We're ward-based, there's approximately 1 million people in Ottawa. Excuse me. And Ottawa's a city that's growing rapidly. And I'll show you a map in a second to highlight this, but we have quite inequitable growth in Ottawa in terms of where we're seeing growth and development. One of the most important things about Ottawa, I think, in our budget particularly, is the huge investment that this city has seen in transportation. And we'll talk a little bit what that means for the people that live in Ottawa. But a huge LRT project has taken over many years of work for the city and a huge portion of the budget. Ottawa's total budget is 5.2 billion operating, 1.92 for capital. Excuse me, just so you can get a sense of the scale and in comparison to your own city. So I wanted to show you a map just to show how Ottawa functions. We have, as I said, 24 different wards, and we have an extreme urban-rural divide. And so in our advocacy work, we really see the challenges of that. and not too different to other places in the city or other places in the province. Well, excuse me. But the needs of rural populations and the needs of urban populations sometimes are not extremely aligned. And so the representation that we see by counselors can sometimes be really challenging when we're trying to advocate for gender equity and social justice in our city, because those needs are so different. I think it's something like 10% of the population is rural, but we have, because we're ward-based, we have our geography doesn't reflect that. So it's just this interesting conflict. And I know many cities have similarities due to amalgamation, but we really see it as an interesting sort of political challenge in Ottawa. In terms of our budget advocacy, our approach is always grounded, as I've said, in community knowledge and lived experience. We take an intersectional feminist lens to our work, and we really focus on municipal budgets as a tool for equity and inclusion. Often we say that, the municipal budget is where things land. It's where we have sometimes the most potential to impact change. And so every year when it becomes budget season, we spend a lot of time with our members focusing on this. And Cassidy's in a second going to get into some of our tools for change. But I'll just quickly share some of the actions that we always take on. We really strive to translate the budget into language that is plain and simple. It is such a complicated document. When we read through, it's hundreds of pages, and it's really hard to interpret. So we spend a lot of time in trying to translate and make things simple and make things that matter to people. How does this impact your life and why? We support community analysis and dialogue, and Cassidy will share how we do that. We create collective advocacy messages, often with other partners and community orgs, and we support member-driven advocacy and engagement. And one thing I just wanted to share quickly is that when we talk about the budget and how we measure success, to us, we often see it as when we have a member who's never been to City Hall show up at City Hall to talk about budget, or someone who's never given a deputation is standing up and telling their story in front of a room full of people, or someone participating by sitting through an entire budget meeting. We had this last budget, we had members who came to the council meetings, and they sat through hours and hours, and just their presence being there is so powerful. So when we do these things, we really change the dialogue, even as just sitting in that room. And at Cowie, we have peach scarves that we wear at City Council to, just so that councillors know that Cowie's in the room. But by being present, by using our voices, we find that participation in something like budget, it doesn't necessarily need to be loud as long as we're there. I'll hand it over to Cassidy to talk about more of our tools for change.
Thanks, Meg, and thanks for that lovely overview of Cowie's budget work. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the tools we use and that we've used over the years. So this includes our Eyes on the Budget document, our alternative budget document, some trainings that we offer, and then, of course, working in coalition and collaboration. So our Women's Eyes on the Budget is a Cowie developed framework and advocacy tool, and it's been really central to Cowie's early and ongoing gender responsive budgeting work. I think it's a format that we have replicated from like 2006 to 2014. So we did it consistently over the years. And what it is it ends up being like about a 7-page pamphlet. We know that municipal budgets are intimidating, and because of that, they often favor participation from those in positions of privilege and power. And so our Women's Eyes on the Budget document did several things. It broke down the budget cycle into key dates and decision points, which supported community members to engage throughout the process. It also offered guiding questions on key areas so that members could participate in public consultations and feel confident and be equipped with language that they could use when meeting with city councilors. It created some shared language for advocacy, and it allowed us to sort of take collective input and organize it into key messages. And so in doing so, this document actively supported people to actually influence decision making. And so my next slide here just sort of shows one page from the early rendition of this document. So you'll see sort of in column 1, we sort of outline what does the transit system currently look like in Ottawa and provide a little bit of background information. Then we have a section where we outlined what the draft budget proposed. This is from, I think, like 2006 maybe, so it's quite an old document. But the third column outlines what the concerns of the Cowie community were. And then the fourth column was where we had those sample questions so that members were equipped with language to use when advocating. And so there would be about 7 pages, and each page would sort of be on a different theme, but follow this similar format. Another tool for change that we've used is the alternative budget. And so this is the community created vision for Ottawa's budget. It was about 18 organizations that came together and formed Ottawa's Coalition for a People's Budget. Cowie was one of the convening partners, and we supported sort of an equity analysis within that alternative budget document. This coalition also worked with Vivek Research. And so I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with the alternative federal budget that's produced by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. But our alternative municipal budget was modeled off of that document, but really taking that local municipal focus. And it created a vision for what the city of Ottawa could accomplish if they invested their money differently. And it was about imagining possibilities. So we were really clear when releasing this document that much of what we outlined couldn't be achieved within that budget cycle, but we wanted this to be a resource that community members could go back to so that they could engage in that long-term advocacy. What are our long-term goals and the long-term changes that we need to see in order for a city to be producing a more equitable budget? And that includes like how we're accessing revenue within the city and how that could look different and what that would mean if it did look different. So it was really an aspirational document. And in the past years, this document was part of a larger advocacy strategy. And so it included a rally at City Hall, a press conference, and a Better Budget event. The Better Budget event included a panel discussion with some key community organizations who could really speak to and break down different sections of the budget, as well as breakout groups so that folks had an opportunity to sit together and talk about how they might advocate for changes in that year's budget cycle. Each of these different components was always really aligned with the budget cycle. So being really strategic with timing was important. So our rally and our budget event were often held on the date that the draft budget was tabled. And so that being strategic just allows us to really amplify our concerns. Another tool for change that Cowie uses is training. And this is really about building the capacity of our community to intervene in budget decisions. And we do this through sort of 2 different trainings that we offer. One is our deputations or delegation training. These have been offered by Cowie to support community members in going to speak at committee meetings. And so in Ottawa, November is often when the draft budget's being tabled and discussed at different committee meetings. And so Cowie will host a deputation training ahead of these meetings to support community members to get out and speak. And this often includes supporting members to write their deputations. It might be offering to look them over in advance of speaking. Our trainings provide an opportunity for members to practice giving their deputations. And we always encourage our community to also show up and support those who are speaking. And then the second training that we offer is a gendered participatory budgeting training. This is something that Cowie has offered over the past 2 years. This training helps participants define what a fair and equitable budget looks like. It breaks down how Ottawa's budget is made and where it can be changed, and it prepares participants to speak with city councillors to advocate for a more just budget. And then last is coalition and collaboration. All of the tools for change that we just spoke about are tools that Cowie has created in collaboration with organizations, and we often rely on that collaboration to also help us spread the word. So our Women's Eyes on the Budget document that was created, we shared with our community developer network through our community health and resource centers, and they were able to get it to residents and into residents' hands. So really relying on our partners to help us share the information and also help us inform what our shared advocacy should be. So as we know, municipal budgets are highly technical and time intensive. So we just recognize that like no single organization has the capacity to influence them on their own. And so shared analysis and coordinated messaging helps ensure that community priorities are enforced across deputations, meeting with councillors, media engagements, public events. The more that we're collaborating and we're all communicating the same message, the easier it is for councillors to hear in the long run. So some of our past successes that we've been able to achieve through this work that we've done, in 2017, the Equipass was approved by City Council, and the Equipass offered reduced transit fares for individuals living on low income. The rate for the Equipass has not increased throughout various budget cycles, and that's something that we're always advocating for, is to freeze the rate on the community pass and the Equipass. We have seen individual transit fares increase, but we've been successful in maintaining the rate for the Equipass that was put in place in 2017. The other big success we've seen is that in 2019, the city approved $15 million in capital funding for affordable housing, along with a commitment to dedicate land near rapid transit for new projects. And then I'll just pass it to Meg to wrap this up.
And we wanted to share a really current one. This past budget cycle, we did a lot of advocacy around paratranspo in Ottawa, and in particular, we tried to highlight some of the inequity in services between paratranspo and our OC Transpo system. And so we did some pre-work. We had members meet with the city councillor, and really just a lot of advocacy over a long time period. And then we had a big success in that this past budget cycle, they passed that there would be 4 free days a month for paratranspo. Paratranspo had no free days, whereas OC Transpo has 2 free days a week. So this wasn't, we'd love to see this be the same as it is for OC Paratranspo and OC Transpo both have free days for seniors, but the 4 free days a month was a huge success, and our members are really proud of it.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add, and we've talked a little bit about this, but all of these past successes and these wins that you see have all been achieved in collaboration with other organizations. So it has been, Cowie has often been at the front of convening those organizations, of creating those shared advocacy messages, but none of this work we've been able to do on our own. And we've really relied on the expertise and the capacity of partner organizations to be successful. And so we can't talk about our budget work without talking about Making Voices Count. Making Voices Count is a civic engagement table that Cowie convenes monthly. It's convened and facilitated by Cowie, and during our early budget work, this table included community members with lived experience and representatives from various community organizations. So this monthly meeting is often where our priorities for the city budget came from. It was community members and community organizations sharing with Cowie the challenges that they were experiencing within their community. Often they were the ones generating the solutions. And it was the role of Cowie to take all of that feedback and form these collective advocacy messages. But it was this group that was really generating the content for that. MVC members were also provided media training so that they could speak to budget priorities. MVC members were often the ones who were meeting with councillors and giving deputations. And Cowie was sort of doing that background work to really enable them and to support their capacity to be able to do that. So Making Voices Count has been really central to Cowie's budget advocacy. And it's sort of been that consistent space where we can bring everybody together to develop that shared messaging.
So to wrap up, we'll just share a few key lessons and things that we've learned. Number one, budgets are not neutral documents. They are value laden. And they're more than just numbers, right? They really represent the city's priorities. Another critical to us is that lived experience is essential budget expertise. And as Cassidy has mentioned, these documents can be so overwhelming and intimidating. And we always try to hit home the point that lived experience is budget expertise, and it matters so much. The process matters as much as the outcomes, and we put a lot of energy and time into process. And for us, that's, convening the Making Voices Count, or setting up meetings with members, or reviewing someone's deputation. But it's all part of this process, and we really put an emphasis on that. Intersectionality strengthens budget analysis. And some questions that come to mind are resources being allocated equitably? How do we bring the voice of equity into City Hall? These issues are so complex and intersecting. When we're talking about putting money into transit, we also need to talk about poverty reduction. We also need to talk about housing. And so these, every single issue is so interrelated. And when you put the layer of lived experience on top of any singular issue, it's completely intersectional. And you see how as a system, any singular budget decision really impacts the lives of individuals and their experiences and their realities, and their identity. Timing and strategy are critical. We've for a long time been part of advocating for budget advocacy to start in the spring, when the city would begin advocacy in the fall when the draft budget came out. However, at doing community organizing, we need time. And so this year, actually, there was some budget engagement that started in the spring. So we were really happy to see that. And again, as Cassidy has said, all of our successes are done in collaboration. And that is something that we feel is a real success of our organization, is that we always work with partners, and we offer our unique knowledge and they offer their unique knowledge, and it really strengthens our advocacy. Cassidy and I are both coughing, so I think I'll end it there. Cassidy, did you have any final comments?
We've touched on it a little bit, but I think that one of the really big lessons for us is that the process matters as much as the outcome. And as we mentioned, like, municipal budgets are incredibly complex documents. And so whatever we can do to create the space for those who typically wouldn't have the power and privilege to be engaged. That is all like an essential part of gender responsive budgeting. So I think sometimes when we think about equity and we think about wanting to see gender included within our budgets, we think about the outcome and we think about seeing the things like more money in affordable housing and a better transit system. And yes, we all want to see those, and that would show equity. But for Cowie, like getting people to the table and having them voice their perspectives and getting to share their lived experience and be engaged in the civic process is also part of that gender responsive budgeting work. So if there's like one thing you take away from this, that would be what I would hope it would be. So I just wanted to reinforce that.
Thank you so much, Nick and Cassidy, for such a thoughtful and practical presentation. It was really powerful to see how tools like Women's Eyes on the Budget, alternative budgets, and deputation trainings turn such complex systems into something communities can truly engage with. And what stood out to me is in how you centered lived experience as a form of budget expertise and experience. And this is something that we're also seeing through our own work with the SRCI project. So thank you so much for that presentation. Now I'm going to turn it over to Srijoni and Kara to discuss the City of Toronto's work and perspective. And it's a nice transition for us to go from more of a community-driven efforts and approaches to the institutional and city perspective. So over to you, Srijoni and Kara, to take over.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually just saying a quick hello because my very talented colleague Srijoni is going to lead us through the work of the Gender Equity Unit in the City of Toronto. My name is Kara. Thank you so much for having us. I'm the manager of the Gender Equity Unit. But I just have to say, I'm getting this whole sense of deja vu because I go a long, long way back with City for All Women initiative, which I think the current presenters won't know. But this is way back to the days of Suzanne Dirge and we worked on I think this was 2014, 2016. So you talked about, collaboration and the importance of partnerships. And there was a huge collaboration between City for All Women Initiative, the City of Toronto. And at that time, I was the director of an organization in Toronto called Toronto Women City Alliance, which was sort of the equivalent of Cowie, but in Toronto. And the mission of Toronto Women City Alliance was to bring women's voices into municipal politics. So exactly what you're doing. And we created the first Canada-wide municipal toolkit for municipalities across Canada. And it was a huge undertaking by Cowie. There were lots of municipalities involved. And then there was a training at the City of Toronto. So I say all of that to say, know that your work has many deep roots, lots of memories. There's a lot of institutional memory happening here. And also that we did that work in 2014, 2016. And then I became Toronto's first gender equity manager. So there are always trickle down effects to all of these things. And also I see that one of your board members is Sausan Al-Rafi, who used to lead gender equity work at City of Ottawa, and now she's in community safety. And I know Sausan very well. So I say all of that to say there are many friends on this call. We know all about City for All Women initiative. We totally support your work. I have to say that flipped me on agreeing to come to this event outside working hours. So you can give City for All Women initiative all the credit for that. And with that, my awesome colleague Srijoni, who is with me in the Gender Equity Unit, will lead us through just some highlights of our work in the City of Toronto.
Thank you so much, Cara, and thank you so much, Cassidy and Meg, for that amazing presentation. And good evening, everyone. It is amazing to be in this space with all of you, and I'm definitely learning a lot, reflecting a lot. So always grateful to be in this space with all of you and your wisdom. My name is Srijoni. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a consultant working with Cara in the gender equity team at the City of Toronto. Is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. I see some thumbs up. Thank you. And like many of you, I'm also recovering from a cold. So if I'm pausing to cough, my apologies. It's been a grueling recovery. So I appreciate all of your patience. So the City of Toronto is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and it continues to be shaped, improved by the contributions of women and of Indigenous, Black, and other equity-deserving groups. And in 2021, 52% of the city's population identified as women. However, we do know that even, the City of Toronto is a diverse city. There are a lot of barriers facing these groups as well. And so the Gender Equity Unit's work is focused on addressing such disparities and improving outcomes for women, girls, and gender diverse residents of Toronto. So that is kind of the overarching objective with which we do the work that we do in the Gender Equity team. And hopefully through today's presentation, I'll share a little bit more about how our work is situated, some key components and examples of the work that we've been doing at the city, as well as some reflections and lessons learned and things that we have taken away through this process. So with that, at the City of Toronto, just like any other equity work, it cannot happen in a silo. It cannot happen in a vacuum. And so our gender equity work is really situated within and informed by other equity-related and reconciliation-related activities that is happening broadly at the City of Toronto. So we work alongside community. As Cara mentioned, even this gender equity work, there's a long-standing history of community voices, community advocacy that shapes our work. There's also a wide range of human rights, equity-related legislations and policies that we align our work with. And we also have strategic partnerships with various offices at the City of Toronto. We are gender equity, but there are other population-specific offices as well at the City of Toronto that we work very closely with. And lastly, we ensure that our work is aligned with the broader City of Toronto corporate objectives. There is a range of strategies, action plans related to poverty reduction, community safety, various different social economic challenges and priorities that we also work alongside. So our work moves beside as well as in partnership with all of these different mechanisms that shape the overarching equity and reconciliation landscape at the city. Now, if we zoom in to our team's work, which is the gender equity work, we are doing various activities to drive outcomes, like I said, for women, girls, and gender diverse folks at the City of Toronto. A key component of any equity work is learning. I think the learning doesn't stop, and it shouldn't stop. It's an ongoing process. And to really cultivate and nurture that environment of learning and to continue to build staff capacity to actually apply gender equity analysis within their work, we have a host of tools and resources, and we continue to improve and expand on these resources. But some examples you will see on the screen is the city's Equity Lens tool. This is a corporate tool, and it's an internal tool which city staff are able to access, and it includes a bunch of resources, probing questions to really guide and build that staff capacity and support them in thinking about how their day-to-day projects, programs, their consultations, engagements, various parts of their project, what are the equity implications of that? Are there any unintended consequences? Within that as well, we have a special focus on gender equity, and we have here a screenshot of the page. And as you can see here, it's really focusing in more on the very specific aspects of gender equity analysis. What does a gender equity analysis entail? What is intersectionality as well. And within the hub, there's also a series of different links and resources. It's almost like a hub, excuse me, or a library, if you may, where there are stats, data, and other sources that city staff can access all in one place so that they can quickly apply relevant information, data, learn and obtain new information to inform their work. And one of the things that's upcoming is within the Equity Lens tool, there is an analytical component, and we are working to further incorporate a gender lens within that analytical component as well, so that we can probe city staff and encourage them and support them in this learning journey when it comes to gender equity. Another key area that we work on is strategic alignment. So really aligning our work strategically with ongoing work processes and different policies, practices that are happening across the city. And a key part of this is the budget process, as we also learned from our previous presenters. The city actually has something called the equity responsive budgeting process. And it is a part of the city's equity and reconciliation processes and commitments. And while this equity responsive budgeting process now has a broader focus on diverse Indigenous, Black, and equity deserving groups, it was first born out of a vital need to embed a gender lens into fiscal decisions. And this happened in 2016, where council first directed the city to incorporate a gender equity perspective across budget and financial decisions to understand and advance economic and social opportunities for women and girls. And since then, that focus has expanded, and now it is a full-fledged process called the equity responsive budgeting process, which is actually led by one of our partner units within our section. And today, these equity impact statements so divisions do conduct an equity analysis for their fiscal decisions, and these analyses are available publicly. If you go to the City of Toronto's budget page, you are able to see for this year, for past years as well. If you on each division's individual budget notes, there are equity analyses included, and the equity impacts are also consolidated into one briefing note, which is also publicly available on the City of Toronto's website, where you can read through the analysis and the impacts that divisions have identified through this process. Another priority, which I think is one of the most important priorities right now that our team is working on, is the gender-based and intimate partner violence. And in 2019, through all Ontario municipalities were mandated to prepare and adopt a community safety and well-being plan and address some of the root causes of crime, health inequities, and social priorities. And as a part of this important work, gender-based and intimate partner violence was designated to be a key priority area. And in the City of Toronto then in 2023 took the additional step of declaring gender-based and intimate partner violence as an epidemic and instructed staff to take action. And today we are, as a gender equity unit, working on the gender-based and intimate partner violence internally. And we are working with various city divisions, our boards and agencies and partnerships to identify key opportunities to advance these gender-based violence and intimate partner violence priorities, and find opportunities to really amplify impact and support those that are facing barriers or that are implicated by gender-based violence today. Community engagement, like I said, it has been I think the gender equities work has long been shaped by community voices, and it continues to be so. As a means to continue to center and amplify those lived experiences and the voices of community, the city continues to work with a wide range of gender-based violence community organizations. We currently have a working group as well, and sector consultations, public consultations with survivors through these community organizations have been conducted conducted. And just recently, there was a council motion, and we are currently also working on a public awareness campaign for 2026, which will further center and amplify supports for survivors. And Toronto Police Service, as one of the City of Toronto's key agencies and partners that we work with, this is for all of your information, has also launched a new intimate partner violence dashboard for the first time. And it includes information about it incorporates all the intimate partner and family violence data into one spot, and it is accessible to the public in the public safety data portal. So I hope you're able to take a look at it and take a look at the data, download it so to support your own learning and identify any further opportunities. And lastly, along the lines of community work, the city also has a Two-Spirit lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and queer council advisory body. This is a public appointees body and includes members with lived experiences, diverse members from the 2S LGBTQ+ communities in Toronto, and they provide advice to City Council based on their lived experiences and ways to reduce barriers and inequities across the city. If you're interested, the 2S LGBTQ+ advisory committee meetings are on YouTube. And if you ever want to take a look at the various things that they have advised on, that is also publicly available for you. And lastly, with those examples, I just want to quickly wrap up with some key enablers and opportunities that we have learned and reflected on in the last couple of years. The first is council leadership and civil service leadership as well. We have found, with the city declaring gender-based violence to be an epidemic, as well as the kind of leadership support that we receive in terms of driving forward alignment across different priorities when we're working with different divisions. It has been really key internally to be able to advance this work and really elevate and give weight to this priority. There are also, in terms of financial resources, this is always crucial, I think, to be able to do the work that we do. And public advocacy, like I said, continues to shape and support our work. And we recognize that people's lives' contexts are always changing as well. And so we are always working with the working group and our community partners to ensure that we are continuing to respond to the actual experiences of Toronto residents. And internally, relationship building and change management strategies has also been crucial. People when it comes to equity work can be at different places in their learning journey. And so really cultivating those relationships and applying a change management lens, a transformation lens, and really building long-term relationships have been very important for us. Identifying our partners, nurturing that relationship, working together, and collaboration has been key in terms of how we have been amplifying impact and really trying to do this work together. And with that, I'll pause and see if Cara, you have anything to add in terms of if I may have missed anything or any other thoughts.
I don't have anything to add except some more some shout outs. I know this is given by YWCA Hamilton, and we have on this call one of our key partners from YWCA Toronto, who is on our external GBVIPB working group. So shout out to Sammy. And I'll open it up for questions. Pass back to Muska.
Yes, thank you so much, Cara and Srijoni, for such a thoughtful and generous presentation. It was really helpful to see how Toronto's gender equity work is really woven into everyday city systems, like from staff learning tools and intersectional analysis to equity responsive budgetings and major priorities like addressing gender-based violence. I think your emphasis on continuous learning and grounding this work in community voices made it clear how equity becomes it becomes real when it's built into how decisions are made, not treated as an add-on. So again, really appreciative of the amazing presentation.
I can share a little bit about the work we've done and will be doing in Hamilton.
Thank you, Daniela. That would be great.
Thanks. And please don't be shy. Do ask a question. And to our incredible presenters, thank you for showing up sick. And we will not take it personally if you need to just excuse yourself at this point and go and get some much deserved rest. Same goes for folks who are attending. This is all recorded. Thank you very, very much for joining us. I wanted to talk a little bit about the impetus for this virtual event and what brought us to this place and what we're going to be doing going forward. So many of you will know that a couple of years ago, YWCA Hamilton proposed to the city that we do gender-based safety analysis on public spaces. We engaged with over 1,000 residents who are generally not surveyed, and through that process we're able to collect some really rich data on practical solutions, some of which that could be implemented very quickly, lighting on trails and on the escarpment stairs, those sorts of things, and some things that are going to take a little bit longer. So fully implementing the between bus stops emergency stop, so post 10 p.m. Folks are nodding, so I'm going to leave it there. And many other things. We learned through that process that people are quite, even more than we thought, intimidated by engaging with the city, engaging with the official process. And Cassidy, I think it was you that mentioned, and it's so nice to hear it reinforced, that it's such a privilege to be an organization that can be a conduit between a bureaucratic institution and people whose perspectives are really critical to building the equitable, sustainable, resilient city that we want to achieve together. So we wrote this grant for the SRCI. It's still joining us, not David. For the SRCI, we really wanted to do this equity budgeting groundwork, and many of you who are in the room are working for nonprofits, you know, you're shoehorning a project into whatever grant is available. So we were able to connect the sustainable development goals to this gender equity budgeting process, and started with some civic engagement training that Muska has been expertly leading over the last 6 or 8 months, culminating in this survey for what folks want to see going into the next budget process. And we're having really positive conversations with the city about what equity budgeting could look like in the next year or two. There'll be a big component of community engagement work, using other organizations as a conduit to the people that they serve, whose voices are sometimes left out of city process. So we'll be coming back to you to work alongside us with that, hopefully very soon. On Monday, my colleague Sarah Glenn and some colleagues from other organizations will be presenting on our plan to support the city with equity budgeting. That's at 3 p.m. If you're planning on joining Public Delegation Day or want to tune in virtually, we can send you a link. And I think the last two things I want to share are that we're going to continue this work in multiple ways, including through the election in a nonpartisan way. So we have 2 events coming up at the end of March. The first, I don't think we have a title for this yet, but March 26th in the evening at the Westdale Theatre, we're going to be hosting the author of Feminist Cities, whose name escapes me now. I'm also foggy-headed, recovering from something. Leslie Kern, thanks. Leslie Kern, who's in Cambridge, so not far from Hamilton, if you want to bring her to an event as well. Leslie's going to talk to us about all of the case studies that she's done in cities that have introduced gender equity budgeting, other gender equity measures, gender equity planning, And then we're going to have a conversation with a few newer city councilors about how they are bringing their equity perspective to their leadership at the city. And then a couple days later, March 28th, we're actually going to be running an equity campaign school to support folks who want to dip their toe in the municipal process, perhaps as a volunteer, all the way up to and including those folks who are ready to take the leap and run for office. That'll be a full day campaign school 9 to 3, and that's hosted at City Hall. So I'm going to say in the next week or two, if you've signed up for this event, you'll receive an invitation to attend one or both of those. And I really hope that you'll consider it. And if you have questions about this project specifically, I'm not sure we can answer them tonight, but please do get in touch with Muska and I through email.